Today we're answering the question, how do you let go of expecting perfectionism from kids? And kudos to this mom for asking me this question because I think we know we're not supposed to ask kids to be perfect in math, but ooh, we just kind of really still do want it. And so I think it's such a great question to ask. How do we let this go even though we want them to, sit the right way and be quiet and be dressed right and not make noise and then also to love it and fall in love with Christ in the Eucharist at the same time? Okay, I'm going to answer your question. And this question was a little bit layered though, by the way. So this mom, her kids are 5, 3.5, 2.5, and 9 months old. Okay, girl, I love you so much. I will address that in just a second. And she was just saying, how do you balance religion with everyday life? Because of course, with those ages, and those are all pretty small, we're just trying to get through feeding them and nap time and them spilling their water all the time and running into chairs and then crying. And it's just a lot. It's really intense. And she said, but this was the really important thing. She said, my husband and I don't want our kids to resent mass or their prayer life. Okay. So that's the deep seated fear, right? The fear is we're looking at these teeny tiny kids that aren't even going to remember this time, right? And we're worried that the way that we're talking to them and the way that we are doing religion with them is going to leave some sort of bad taste in their mouth, some sort of bad experience, and then they're not going to choose religion as adults. So let me just break this down because there's a couple things going on here. First of all, we are required to teach the faith to our children. I'm Sterling Jakewith. I had 6 kids in 8 years, and I really didn't like motherhood, and I went on this journey to figure out how to enjoy the whole thing. And I've been teaching women how to do that and have interior peace for 10 years. And so I'm answering questions like this all the time. And I post them here on YouTube. It is not our responsibility to make sure that they end up Catholic. And that is so important because a little bit you're trying to do God's job, right? It is between your children and the Lord, their salvation story. Okay? It is your job to show them the love of Christ and the peace. This is where I think most of us need to work on improving the peace that we have by believing that God is who he says that he is. We should be a living example of peace and joy. There should be this brightness around us that people are attracted to because we are Christians. We should look different than the rest of the world. That is the thing that should be attractive, right? And if we're doing that well, the kids will be like, oh, I see that and I want some of that. Okay. Still, some won't choose it, but it's not your fault. So if you go into parenting thinking, if I push all these buttons the right way, beep, boop, beep, boop, 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 then the kids will be Catholic. This is not true. They have free will. All of us must choose the Lord freely of our own will for it to be true. And that is just between them and the Lord. They will all get to be adults and they will all choose. My husband and I were adult converts, so it's very easy for us to tell our kids, hey, you may choose not to be Catholic. I tell them that. It's totally your choice. I said, we're going to raise you Catholic, and I'm going to ask you to go to Mass, and I'm going to tell you what I believe, because I looked at the world, and out of all of the religions, this is the one that I chose. As an adult, nobody made me, so I really, truly, genuinely believe that it's true. And I said, but that's the only reason to be Catholic. The only real reason to be Catholic is that you believe that it's true. And I said, you guys are all going to get to figure that out for yourselves as adults. We're not worried about this at ages 5, 3.5, 2.5, and 9 months, though, my friend. Okay. And that is some tight spacing. And I had spacing like that. So we are just trying not to yell at them. I'm telling you right now, that is the Jesus that you can give them right now, is not yelling at them. And just being like, I love you, little ducklings. Come here. We're taking them to Mass. When I had little kids in Mass, our rule was quiet, but they could still be wiggly. So I didn't want them to be loud, but I didn't mind those boys crawling all over me. At one point my boys were 1, 2, and 3. And then they were 2, 3, and 4. And then 4, 5, and 6, right? That's nuts, taking those ages to Mass. But as long as they were quiet, I didn't mind that they were crawling around and wiggly and whatever. I also have no requirement that my kids like Mass. None. For a long time. I don't even know that I say that to my big kids who are now 14, 12, and 10, the girls, okay? I'm just why would you like Mass unless you truly understand what's happening at the Mass? And do we really think that 7-year-olds get that? Some of them do. I do think that some young children, by the grace of God, receive a special gift from the Holy Spirit and they just totally get it. But most of the kids are going to feel like Mass is boring. And I'm yeah, Mass is totally boring if you don't understand what's happening. And that's what I tell my kids, by the way, when they're oh, I don't want to go to Mass. I'm totally. I totally get that. If I was a kid, I don't think I'd want to go to mass either. And I said, but when you really begin to understand what's happening at the mass, right? You're going to long for it. And I will say, like, mom, nobody makes mommy and daddy go to mass. We want to go so badly. We want to go so badly on a random Wednesday because we know what's happening there and we love it so much. And that's just the truth that I tell them. And I just fully believe that by living out how I feel about it and telling them out loud why I'm choosing it, that they will more than likely choose that. I don't make them, I don't shame them, I don't try to rub their nose into it. I'm not like, you should love the rosary. It's boring. The rosary is also boring until you really, truly, and deeply understand what the rosary is. Now, in our family, we expect the obedience of them to pray the rosary when we're doing it, but I don't expect them to like it. I am totally fine if they roll their eyes and go, oh, I don't feel like doing it. I'm like, oh, I know. I love you so much, but we're going to do it. Right? So, right now, you're in this phase and it's hard, but you're projecting what's going to happen in the future. And this is something that's just so important. God doesn't give us any grace for our imaginary problems. So right now you have the current problem of 4 really tiny kids and just the logistics of living with 4 really tiny kids. Okay. But on top of that, and God's giving you grace for that because you have it. But on top of that, you're like carrying a 25-pound kettlebell of the future of them resenting you or mass or religion. Right? You're just like walking around carrying this, and the Lord's like, but you could just set that down, right? You could just set that down and not worry about that. I can't help you with that because it's an imaginary problem. And I'm being a little silly about this because we do this all the time. So many of us are exhausted because we're just literally carrying something that God has not asked us to carry. So we covered a lot in this video. 1, you are not responsible for your kids being Christian. You are not. That is between them and the Lord. Now, I'm not abdicating any kind of so you're on your own, kid. I'm not doing that. I'm showing the beauty of Christ and Catholicism. And I tell them why I believe it's true. I tell them why I chose it. I was raised with nothing. I was Protestant for 2 years, and then I chose to be Catholic. And I talk to them about why. And I tell them that they get to choose, and they better believe what they choose. I said, don't be Catholic just because your parents are Catholic. Right? But you can just see I'm giving them so much space to grapple with it themselves because they have to anyway. Right? So many people, they raise their kids in ultra strict Catholic households and they make it seem like there's no choice. And then when they get out, they realize oh, there is a lot of choice. And actually the vast majority of people don't choose to be Catholic. And then for those kids, sometimes they just don't know what to do and then they stop going to mass. So tell them early on, you can choose it. And then also, like I said, I don't make them like it. Why would they like it if they don't understand it? And I don't know what the capacity of children's minds are to understand some of these things. And so I just say, you're going to understand someday. And then I hope you love it as much as I do. By the way, I am a catechesis of the Good Shepherd teacher, which is trained to teach children about religion from ages 3 to 6 in a Montessori environment. And that is when their hearts are really naturally open to the love of God. And it's kind of just like God loves you so much and he's with you. And, we teach them the infancy narratives about, the visitation and, the birth of Jesus and the adoration of the Magi. And we talk about the Good Shepherd. So I think kids can soak up a lot of concepts. I don't know that they can understand what's happening at Mass to the degree that a 4-year-old would then not think that Mass is boring. Even my 8-term kids who come and have this amazing experience with me about the Mass in our little class, still probably on a Sunday are but it's long and I'm wiggly and I want to go home and I want to eat goldfish crackers or whatever, right? And I'm just okay with that. And again, some of them have the gift or the charism of getting it at a young age. Right? Some priests feel their calling, their vocation at a very young age. That does happen. But if it isn't happening, I don't then think it's a problem. And I don't make it mean anything about their likelihood or not of choosing Catholicism as adults. So to answer the very last question, which is really about how do you get over perfectionism? It's just removing the pressure on yourself. The reason that you are gripping the kids and trying to expect perfectionism, a little bit, we don't want to be embarrassed in front of our friends. That's just true. We don't want to be disruptive. So I would just immediately be like, oh, I don't even care. It is amazing that I got 4 tiny children into the car and in this place. I don't care what anybody thinks around me, right? Like, I think it's so great that we chose to come here and we didn't have to. So that would be my thought about bringing 4 kids to mass, and anyone looking at me weird or anyone being like, get a hold of your kids. Then I would just be like, I am going to love the Lord so much that my kids see that he is my reason for my peace, which is what we talk about here on this channel, which is interior peace. The Lord is the reason for my enduring peace. And of course, we're going to lose it all the time. That's fine. But we're going to come back to it and we're going to show the children. I have peace even in hard situations. And I will say to the kids, I don't know how people do life without Jesus, right? Because I'll be like, today is rough and I'm having a hard time, but just the Lord lives inside of me and I talk to him. I don't know how people do it without him. And I will tell them that because I want them to know when their life is hard, they can lean on him and he can give them real comfort and real strength in difficult situations. So you will care less about what your 4-year-old is doing in mass when you don't feel this crushing pressure to make sure that they're Catholic. The way that we make sure that they're Catholic, if we could, and you can't because of free will, really genuinely is just to live it out. And then to tell them that they have a choice and that they're going to have to choose. And as they get older, you're going to tell them more and more things about Catholicism and the Eucharist and the Catholic Church and the rules and why and Mary and the saints. And there's so much. It's so layered and so beautiful. We could never learn it all. But as you unveil more of it to them and you get excited about it, you'll transfer that to them. But your job, I forget the wording of the catechism, but it's like our job to teach the faith to the kids. The catechism does not say it is our job to make sure the kids end up Catholic. Our job is just to teach it and live it out. It's to model it for them. And let that be our focus. And then when that's your focus, you're like, oh, I got to work on that interior peace thing then, Sterling. I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm here to help all of you guys work on interior peace. And this is a really common lie that moms believe, like that they're screwing up the religion aspect of the kids and that they're not going to be religious. But the other really, really big lie that moms believe is that they're lazy. It's crazy. It's such a thought error. We believe that they're lazy. And so if you are one of those moms, I want you to watch this video because I will clean that up for you and you will never again in your life tell yourself that you're lazy. Go watch this video because I will tell you why it's not dangerous to stop thinking that about yourself and why you absolutely must. And it's going to feed into this whole idea of us having, interior peace. And when we model that for the kids, they end up being well-adjusted adults. And in the end, that's what we really want. All right, my friends, I'm praying for you. Please pray for me and have a blessed day.